And you
It's
mentioned, right, about that mortgage fraud. There's so many other types of frauds, right? Like wire frauds and stuff like that. Can
yeah.
you share a little bit of those type of stories? Have you ran into like any wire frauds or anything like that?
Oh, so I actually back.
What's going on, everybody? Hey, I'm so excited today. We got Ella Ray. Ella, super thank you for being here with me and my audience on this lovely Thursday afternoon, right?
Yeah. Thursday. Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here. I'm glad that I was really surprised when I saw your email or your request. So thank you.
No, thank you. I'm always excited to have amazing entrepreneurs in my show and just share, right, what your journey's been like, what you're going through, what problems you're solving in real estate. A lot of people think is like, when they see a TikTok reel or they see a IG reel, people like making money, right? There's a lot of like not headaches, right? But there's problems that we're solving, right? To get to that level, and it's a challenge, and we all start somewhere. And especially women, right, that want to want to get into this type of role, right? A lot of people see real estate as well, not maybe from the lens of an investor, but
Mm.
possibly just like a real estate agent, right? So if there's a woman out there that's an agent but wants to pivot into that real estate investing space, what can they do, right? So thank you again for being here and giving us this opportunity to learn a little bit from you, and you could share your journey. So Ella, tell me a little bit about Ella, right? Where did Ella like begin her journey in real estate investing? Was it accidental? Was it like planned all along from the 8-year-old mind of Ella?
No,
How did
definitely
that
not.
happen?
I kind of just fell into it. I think I started with the intentions of being a wholesaler. For me, it was something where I was just looking for another way to make money, right? I had come across real estate investing at a point when I was no longer working. I was running a construction company, and that was kind of coming to an end. But I really liked real estate because I was coming into houses that were just looking like garbage, and then we would go there, we'd do like stucco applications, and all of a sudden it was like this beautiful house now. And I started becoming exposed to real estate. So for me, it was kind of like, well, how can I do more of that without being an agent? And the algorithm. You start looking at the things on YouTube, and all of a sudden your feed is like filled with all of these things. You're like, what's this? What's this? So I learned about wholesaling, and of course, videos with Jamil and Pace and Jerry Norton, and learning about the ins and outs of wholesaling and what that looks like and how you can make money off of this. And for a while, I was thinking, well, I'll just do this on my own. Like, I got YouTube videos. Why am I going to spend $5,000, $10,000 paying somebody to teach me this? And it was really difficult.
Mm,
It wasn't something that came easy. And, I was like, well, I remember I was standing in the kitchen one day, and I was thinking to myself, if I don't make this commitment now, and I don't pay this money now to get into these rooms and be around these people
mm.
and really learn how to do the thing, I'm gonna be here 5 years later in the same exact spot thinking that I should have just done it, right? So, it's like Pace always says, "When is the best time to plant the tree? 5 years ago. When's the next best time?" Right? Now. So,
Right.
let me just get started on this. And I made the commitment. And oh man, there were months where I hated my life, and I was like, I can't stand this. I'm not getting any deals. I remember my first deal that like fell through. It was December 24th of 2023. And we were supposed to close. It was a deal in Orlando. Get to the closing table. It's gonna be my first assignment. It was like $10,000. I was so excited. And the woman who was selling the house decided that she no longer wanted to sell the house.
Oh my God. That was
And
your first deal.
that was my first deal. And I haven't been like, I really hadn't been working. I moved down here to Florida without a job, without like anything. I just went blind. I was like, I'm just going to go live in Florida. And I was doing the wholesaling thing. And I was like, oh, this is great. I finally got a deal. And I remember after I got that phone call, like we tried and tried and tried. That deal just went so sideways so many different times. Couldn't get it to like, we couldn't get her to sign. So I remember going to a parking lot and just sitting in my car and just like bawling my eyes out because I was so upset that this happened. And I was like, I don't understand. Like, I had people relying on me. This was, it was going to help me with my situation. I was going to pay bills and all that stuff. And that's when I realized, I was like, you really have to have a stomach of steel to do this work.
Mm,
But it also realized that wholesaling wasn't for me.
mm.
And, I had been in the community maybe about 2 months at this point, and I came across videos about how to be a TC, right? It was Caleb's videos. And
Yeah.
I would get in there and I'm like, "Oh, I like this." I geek out over paperwork, right? Like, that's just always been my thing. I was
So
an executive assistant.
before we get into your TC story, I want to
Yes,
pick a little bit about your wholesaling journey, right? Because for those that don't know, right, wholesaling is where you're either talking directly to sellers or
right.
you're talking directly to agents to get a property at a reduced price, where therefore you could turn around and sell that property at a higher price, right?
Mhm.
So the negotiations involved with going talking to the seller or talking to an agent, right? Those conversations sometimes are extremely lengthy. You have to follow up, as they say. The cash is in the
Unfortunately, this
follow up,
one,
right?
yeah.
The fortune's in the follow up.
Yeah.
But to your point, you need that, like, I don't know, you need to be either very resilient and uh, be okay with just people hanging up on you because
Oh, man. Yeah.
so let me ask a question, Ella. So were you doing, what type of wholesaling were you doing, like cold calling direct to sellers, or are you building a relationship with the agents? What
So
was
I was
your
doing direct to seller. And
mm,
I was not having a lot of luck with that. So what I ended up doing was instead partnering up with people who already had deals and were looking for help with dispo, right?
okay,
But also I was also working with them, to try to get the disposition done or whatever. And I finally found someone and it was gonna be great. But it's a lot of work and it is a lot of conversations with people. I mean, I remember I would be on the phone like for an hour at a time, an hour and a half, because a lot of these they were like older people. And they
yeah.
want to tell you their life story, and great, I love it. But at the end of the day, you make your offer, and they're like, no, and they want $500,000 for a house that's like worth $100,000, and there really is no talking them down from that. At least not for me, because I wasn't a closer at the time. Forget about trying to pitch creative. It was like strictly cash. But I will say it's a lot harder than what they make it seem like. It's a lot of developing relationships with people, developing rapport, making sure that kind of like the right things to say to somebody. Talking to a pre-foreclosure versus talking to a probate is two totally
Hmm.
different conversations versus talking to an agent, which is more straightforward and direct, right? And I'm really good with straightforward and direct. That's my wheelhouse. So talking to the sellers wasn't really my thing. And I think that there is a lot of back and forth on there. There's a lot of following
Hmm.
up with them, like, oh, this doesn't work for me right now, or let's have another call, in a week, and then they don't pick up the phone or they don't respond to your text, and you're like, hey, what happened? Did I do something?
Right.
And then finally getting it under contract, and then all the ups and downs with that, title
Yeah,
commitment.
if there are any existing liens that come up, right? And then you're
Right.
like, oh, why didn't you tell me about this lien?
Right, right, yeah. Like, oh, I owed money on that water softener that's sitting on the side of my house, like,
Yeah.
so it's very turbulent, it feels like you're on this constant roller coaster. And for me, it was not something that I was well equipped to handle because I guess I didn't know what to expect.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, Pace Morby and Jerry Norton and Jamil make it look so easy when they're
Gosh,
on their phones.
yeah. Yeah, geniuses on the phone, honestly,
Yeah.
like, I mean, they could get anybody to sell their house to them, and I think I looked at that and I was like, "Oh, I could do that." And it's so funny because when you actually get on the phone, it's like a whole different story, even if you have a script in front of you, like, people are not the other end of the
Yeah.
conversation doesn't go by what you think they're gonna say, right? So, then you have to learn how to pivot, like, "What do I say now? This isn't in the script. I didn't know that they were
Yeah.
gonna say this." So it's definitely it was interesting to say the least, but I quickly found out that it was not my forte, and it was very painful. I think expecting that, and that's the one thing too, don't count your eggs until they hatch. Don't count
Mhm.
on that deal until everybody has signed and funds are dispersed, because you just never know. It could look like it's going to close, and then somebody throws a monkey wrench in there and you're done.
It's done.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
and I think a lot of beginners, right, do experience that wholesaling, right? Either people that are new to real estate investing, what they get into is wholesaling or fixing flipping, right? It's like those are kind of like the two avenues when new investors jump. It's like, okay, I want
yeah.
to get into I wanted to get into real estate investing. What should I do? Fix and flip or become a wholesaler? But
Mhm.
you latched onto a niche within the real estate space as well, right? That it's a great entry opportunity for people that are more analytical, that are more like you mentioned, right? I geek out on stuff like this.
Yeah.
And that was the TC side, right? The transactional coordinator that handles all the paperwork. And that's not easy either, but that is something you enjoy. So tell us a little bit, how did that begin? And you said you were looking at some videos of Caleb Christopher
Yeah.
and
So I find it really interesting that when people want to get into wholesaling, they always get hung up in that, they call it analysis paralysis, but really what it is not knowing what happens after the contract gets signed, right? It's like,
mm.
well, what happens then? I'm what happens then because I'm the one that gets into the closing table for you. I didn't know that that's what that was. So when I started watching Caleb's videos, I had done 20 years worth of executive assistant work to C-level executives. So we're talking like CEOs, COOs, CLOs, like super high level, doing
Mm.
board meetings with people in different countries, coordinating everything in our Manhattan office. Like I had five different bosses all at the same time, knowing how to prioritize, knowing how to pivot, knowing how to problem solve, knowing how to think critically and really take the ball and run with it, right? So those were skills that I had that I was like, how do I implement this into this real estate space that I have known nothing about? So when I saw the TC zooms and the TC videos, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so familiar to me. Like I know how to fill out contracts. I mean, I was getting visas for my bosses in China and in New Zealand and Australia. Like I was doing all of these things with paperwork and contracts, and it just felt like home to me.
Mm.
But now it's like, okay, so what's the process here? Like, how do I figure that part out? And when I just started watching the videos and really getting into the Zooms and trying to just learn, I would kind of help like other TCs with their deals and see the contracts and see what was going on. And eventually it just felt like, okay, I this is not rocket science. This is super easy for me. Like, let's just get this done. Like I can do the paperwork. I'm good with that. So, that was almost 3 years now that I've
Wow, 3 years. That's amazing.
So I have enjoyed every minute of it. For me, I constantly need to be challenged. I like my mind runs at a very fast pace. Like I need to talk fast. I need fast information. I just need everything. Like just give it to me so I can take the ball and I can just go. And
Mhm.
that's something that I'm able to do in this space because I don't have a boss over me like telling me what I need to be doing or not doing. And it's getting to interact with all of the different parties, with the lenders, the attorneys, the agents, the buyer, the seller, the title company, like the wholesaler, and also dealing with a lot of different personalities and
Mhm.
kind of just, I like to call it herding cats because that's essentially what it is, right? There's all these people, they're on their own timeline, they don't all have the same sense of urgency for things, and for me, I like that. It's fun, coming across problems and title issues and figuring out how to solve that and working with it. So like I'm not the TC who's going to be like, "Oh, by the way, you have a lien over here or
Mm.
somebody's dead and we got to figure this out." Like I'll be the TC who's going to get on the phone with the title company and say, "Hey, this is what came up on the title commitment. Tell me what you need from me. How can I help you guys get this sorted out faster so that we're not just sitting waiting on title?" Because of course title has like 100 deals that they're working at any
Yeah.
point in time. So my particular client's deal is not a priority to them over another client's deal. And I think title companies appreciate that. So I've had really good luck with the title companies that I work with, and um, getting these deals closed and being investors' eyes and ears, and kind of pointing out things to them that they might not have seen or might not have known beforehand.
Mm.
And people say, "Oh, I don't need a TC. Like I can do this all on my own. They're too expensive. They're too this. They're too that." And pretty much every deal that I work on, I've saved people at the very least, $5,000. At the
Yeah.
very least, like cover my
Well,
costs and then some, right?
yeah.
Um, and I think,
Well, one thing I was gonna say there is not just the cost you're saving, but also the time. I remember when I did my first creative deal, and big shout out to my friend Heather Grizzard. When I first joined the
I love
community,
her.
I did a creative deal, and I was like, "Who's the TC?" And then Heather's like, "Yeah, I think I can help you." I was like, "Heather, here, help me deal with it."
Yeah, it's
And she
time
went
consuming.
and she went above and beyond, just like what you're describing, right? It's not
Right.
just like you're there to help us as the investors out, to make sure that you're saving our time, but also, you're making sure that you're crossing all the X's and O's, right? And
Yeah.
protecting us, right? And then not only that, the urgency, putting that urgency behind that file, because there are instances where you submit a file and it just sits there, like on the cash transaction I did, like
Mm.
I didn't use a TC, I should have, but like the file just sat there. I was like, guys, when are we going to close? Come on.
Yeah, they're like, "Oh, yeah, that. Okay, we'll get that for you today."
We'll
Meanwhile,
get there to you.
yeah. No, and I don't think unless you're actually in it, you don't understand how much goes into it. And it's not just the time thing, right? It's also the fact that you're not a biased, like you're not an objective party. You're either the buyer or the seller, right? The buyer is not going to be allowed by the seller to go into their mortgage portal to check their escrow balance, to check their, is the loan what they said it was going to be. Like
Mm,
I've had people submit mortgage statements that were doctored.
what? Wow.
Yeah, like you really need somebody who's a neutral third party who can go in there and can really see, like, okay, so let me take a look at your mortgage portal. Let me get your login information. Let me do this. Let me and report back to the seller or report back to the title company and let them know, like, hey, I discovered this in my due diligence, right? Because I'm doing due diligence for everybody too.
Absolutely.
And you as an investor, the seller's not going to let you in there. They're going to let you in there, when, after you've already signed all the documents and the deal is
Yeah.
done. And then guess what? Oh, I forgot to mention my escrow analysis is going up by $500 every month now. Sorry. Like, they're not going to do that. So I think, having a TC to be able to kind of just watch out for everybody is crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you're an investor looking, either if it's a creative transaction or cash deal, make sure you connect with Ella to save you time and save you money and save you headaches, because you already went through enough headaches, right? Trying to lock up the deal and doing what you need to do. So
Right.
you definitely need a team, right? So you need a team that has your backing as well and supports you. So that is
Yeah.
a huge problem you guys are solving, Ella. And you
It's
mentioned, right, about that mortgage fraud. There's so many other types of frauds, right? Like wire frauds and stuff like that.
gosh.
Can you
Yeah.
share a little bit of those type of stories? Have you ran into like any wire frauds or anything like that?
Oh, so I actually, back when I was trying to wholesale, came across this piece of land in Miami, and we got it under contract, and it was like going to be this amazing deal, but yet it was just another one that fell apart. Seller wasn't actually the seller. Seller was just some random person who decided that this was a like some
Wow.
empty lot that they were going to get under contract with somebody and sell. And I am very like, if things if like if the things don't add up to me, I will start digging, right? And I'm like, why isn't this seller doing X, Y, and Z? Like, I don't understand what's going on here. And it's funny because I just kind of like let it go. But as we were doing dispositions and we were coming across, like, we were sending out to sellers, I'm sorry, to buyers, we had one buyer who was like, "Oh, I know whose land that is." And we're
Oh
like, "Oh, okay." And they're like, "Yeah, that land is not for sale. That's not the same person that you're talking to."
my God.
Come to find out, it was just some random person trying to make a buck on somebody else's land.
Sheesh.
You know, and nowadays it's so easy to just fake stuff, right? Like, look at all this AI we have. Now I can
Yeah.
do videos of me. It can, there's one that can do like lip sync or whatever, and it can make me say what I'm not saying. And I'm like, we just have to be so careful now. And a lot of that, even with title companies, fake title companies
Yeah.
happens. Um, so, thankfully, I don't see it as much. I saw it that one time, and I've just been very careful, but not everybody is super careful, right? Like, it can happen to the best of us, and especially more so when it comes to documents and creating your own documents and making it say whatever you want to say. I mean, how many of us haven't sent out POS that aren't ours, right? Or have gone in and that little inspect element button right there, like that can change
Mm,
everything. So I think it's important to know, and to have somebody who knows what to look out for, because as an investor, how many properties are you buying? You
yeah.
know, versus somebody like I'm doing anywhere from 20 to 30 deals a month. I've been doing this for almost 3 years. How many properties and
Right.
how many documents don't you think that I've seen? Right.
Yeah.
So having somebody in your corner with all of that experience and knowing what to look out for is crucial, even on cash deals.
Mm-hmm.
Happens all the time, and even with like title commitments and knowing how to read those and knowing how to interpret that and knowing what that means for you if you potentially close on this. So I don't think TCs get enough value, really. I don't think we get enough recognition, so to speak, because I don't think that most investors understand what we have to bring to the table, and they just kind of think like, "Why are you charging so much?" When a regular buyer's agent TC or a regular listing agent TC is like $300, and we're like 5 times that, whatever. So it's important to understand what we bring to the table, especially on these deals for investors.
Absolutely. And I think you laid it out so well, right? On all the reasons why they should get a TC, right? It's not just here, give me your paperwork. It's not like an office. Like I'm gonna get your paperwork and then hand it off to somebody else, and that's all I'm doing. That's $300 right there, right?
Basically, that's what it is, right? That's what
Yeah,
these do.
that's what $300 would, yeah.
I work with some of these, and I'm like, why are you sending it to me to put in DocuSign when you could have just put it in DocuSign yourself? Like, what are we paying you for? Whereas we're actually going in there and collecting, the information and
Yeah.
talking to the sellers and finding who the heirs are and coordinating things like that. I mean, right now I have a deal where the seller's in New Zealand, having to work with the seller to get to an
Wow.
embassy or get to a consulate because I know, or maybe somebody else doesn't know, that you need certain documents with a wet signature, right? And working on those kind of like small little bumps in the road, like how do we fix that? How do we get across this? And having somebody who knows how to do that is going to be key, and who's going to do it for you, because you're not going to have to spend your time doing it.
Yeah, that's so true.
Um,
And we talk about all this like pre-closing, right? Especially like when like if you guys are looking into creative deals like subject to or hybrid deals or any creative structures, there's that pre-closing what Ella's talking about, right? Like helping you deal with the closing attorney and sellers potentially and making sure all that's done correctly. But
right.
even post-closing, right? After something closes, there are so many other steps that they
Oh,
help you out with. So, it's and it's a must, right? You cannot go without ensuring that your post closing is done correctly. Can you talk
yeah.
to us a little bit about what that post closing is on these type of creative deals?
So post closing can range from, so getting the insurance, right? You have to get a new insurance policy. I don't know how many times I have to say this to people. You cannot keep the old policy, because if something happens, you're not covered. It's a whole big thing. So getting insurance in place. Sometimes people just need help with setting up servicing, right? Like they part of the contract might say, okay, in order for me to sell this to you, Subto, as the seller, I want to make sure that you're going to get servicing on this. So setting up the servicing, maybe letting the HOA know about the change in ownership, going into the mortgage portal and changing all of that information, like contact information and so forth, reaching out to the bank, sending them a third party authorization or sending them the POA, knowing what to do with the insurance check when the seller gets a refund. I mean,
Mm,
it goes from the very beginning all the way to the end, right? Even from how to write up the contract and what numbers actually constitute a purchase price, right? What does this mean? Cash to seller, carry back, whatever. So from beginning to end, I mean, we can be there from the very beginning, like, oh, Ella, I got this seller who wants to do X, Y, and Z. Can you help me, put this
mm,
into a contract? Okay, great. We can do a consult on that, or I can write it up, or whatever the case is. Getting it through title, making sure that everything is good to go, and then doing the post closing too, right? So everything we can pretty much do. Well, I speak for myself, but I can pretty much do everything from beginning to end. And I think these are the things, like I know what is involved in each stage. And these are the things that I don't necessarily know that investors are so privy to, right? Because it's always that what happens after we get the contract signed. And this is
right.
all part of what happens after that. So, servicing, you don't really have to do it. I mean, you can, it's great if you do, it's an added expense, but sometimes people require it. Sometimes if you have 20 properties, you don't want to be managing that every day on a
Exactly.
portal, right? So sure, set it up. But insurance is a must, right? I always include that in my packages. That's like, you're not going to leave my desk like that. That's not going to leave my desk when we're not going to close without insurance.
Mm,
But utilities, I mean, sometimes people just don't have the time and don't want to do it or couldn't be bothered. And like, I'll do that stuff for them. But there is a lot that goes on, especially as pertains to insurance, which is really critical. And I would say, in order of importance, I would definitely say insurance and then everything else. Like insurance is the must, which is
yeah.
why I
And,
always.
and tell us a little bit, why is that insurance so important on these creative
So
structures?
So one of the things that, was is something that I hear often is like, oh, well, I can have two insurance policies, or I'm just going to leave the insurance in the seller's name and I'm going to add myself as additional insured and whatever. So I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding on how insurance actually works, right? The insurance policyholder has to be the person whose name is on the deed. If 123 Main Street LLC is on the deed and Johnny Smith sold me his house and I'm on Johnny Smith's insurance policy, but something happens and the insurance is now looking at it like, okay, so what's going to happen? How are we covering this or not? And they're through their due diligence, they see that the deed switched hands. They could just be like, sorry, you effed up.
Wow.
Like, we're not responsible. And that could be problematic. You get two insurance policies, right? Because you don't want to trigger the due on sale clause because you want to be careful with that. Um, Now something happens to the house, and Geico is telling Progressive, like, we're not going to be responsible for the majority of this claim, you are. And they're going to be like, nope, you are. And it's going to be
Wow.
litigation of like who's responsible for what, and the house is going to be damaged and just sitting there, right? Best thing to do, and I always tell my clients, is get an insurance policy in your name or in the name of the LLC or the name of the trust that you're closing in, whichever one, but make sure that you get that insurance policy. And you have to, of course, add the seller as a loss, as additional insured or additional interest, and the mortgage company as first loss payee. And when you're sending this over to the mortgage company, and hopefully you have an insurance agent who will do it for you, because then who knows what
Mm,
they're doing. But when you send that over, as long as the seller's name is on there and the mortgage company is listed, you're not really going to have a problem because people are entitled to rent out their homes. And what we're essentially doing is we're putting landlord policies on these houses.
right.
Whether or not it's long term or short term, or whether or not you're doing some rehab in there before you rent it out. Like these are the things that you would tell your agent so that you can make sure you get a policy that's going to cover you. But you don't want to go in there thinking, I'm just going to keep the insurance of the seller and I'm going to be fine if something happens, because now you're going to have to deal with the seller to get, and that's if the insurance company decides to cover it.
Right.
So let's just avoid all that chaos and all that, rigmarole, and let's just get you a policy and we should be fine.
No, I love the gems you're dropping about insurance because that is one of the trigger points to do on sale. You mentioned that.
Right.
And also the other thing with those reimbursements, like for whatever reason, if they get a check, right, it's going to have the seller's name. And then it's like, if for
Yeah,
whatever reason the seller doesn't want to sign it for you, like how do you get that money? So
right,
there's so
right.
much drama, and you just nailed and dropped the whole knowledge, the simplicity of making sure you get insurance right under your LLC and the steps behind how to properly structure that right correctly.
Right, yeah, and even that whole insurance check, that's an issue too. It's like, who does it belong to? Well, when you're buying a house, who's paying your insurance? You have to pay the premium
Hmm.
upfront, right? You're the seller. So now the mortgage company is collecting every month to allocate towards your next year's insurance policy. But I'm buying this house and you have a healthy escrow account. You have like $5,000 in there. Now, you cancel your insurance policy and you get a refund on your unused premium. Who does that belong to? Does that belong to you or does that belong to me?
Mm.
That would belong to you. You paid that policy up front. That money is money that you've been putting in that account every month. You get a refund that belongs to you. But if you have $12,000 in arrears and you have a negative $2,000 escrow balance, and now I come in and I put in a policy and you cancel that policy, you get a refund. That's going to go to me, right? Because that escrow account was short. So
Hmm.
things like that. Making sure that the seller understands what the standing of that insurance check is going to be up front, having that
God,
conversation with
that's
them
so
up front.
good.
Like, I am sending you this email. I'm going to need you to cancel this policy. I'm going to need you to tell them why you're canceling it because of this reason. And this is what's going to happen with the check. And this is what you're agreeing to. And having that kind of like managing expectations is huge in this business. You need to be able to put things in writing. Always put things in writing. Like, I can't
Mm.
stress that enough. But that way, when they get this check, it's like, it's not going to be this huge, like, oh, wow, there's another $2,000 here. Like, this belongs to me. Meanwhile, there was a shortage.
Right.
Or even with the buyer, like, oh, there's a $5,000, escrow check. Like, that's going to belong to me. No, it doesn't, because that account
Yeah.
was positive. Um, so knowing these things is part and parcel of doing good deals and doing good business.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
Oh, I love what you share, right? The clarity around that and just,
right,
yeah, having the right expectations, making sure that's in writing. Because to your point, right, I have seen it several times. It's like, hey, I have this check that I can't cash, and the seller won't let me sign it because it's like they won't approve it. Well, to your point, right, why wasn't that in writing? And like
right,
have that clear
right. Why
expectation
wasn't
if
it
if that
discussed?
was the seller's or yours, yeah.
Exactly. And, and I think, and that goes for anything in life. I just feel like people are more understanding when you put everything out on the table and you discuss it and you make sure that there's clarity and transparency surrounding it. And one thing that I would say is probably, particularly in this industry with wholesalers, is like they try to keep everything hush hush and they don't want people to know how much they're making and all this nonsense. In a sub two, you have to know. You have to know what
Yeah,
the numbers are. I'm just not going to take an assignment that says like 350K and I can't see what the underlying mortgage is, or I can't see what the seller carry is, or like there's got to be full transparency with these deals. Cash deals, whatever, nobody cares. But with
yeah,
sub twos, you need to be really transparent and everybody has to be on the same page. Like, seller needs to
right.
understand, buyer needs to understand. So I think when you do that, you eliminate a lot of problems in the future.
Yeah. This is so awesome. Dropping so many gems, Ella. This is so good. Everybody, so hopefully y'all taking notes about how to connect with Ella first. But y'all are taking notes about the insurance because it's so important when you're doing these creative deals. And
Right.
then and just to prove right that even during her journey, right, that it's not easy. She's herding cats, right? She has so many people that she's dealing with. but she found her jam, right? She found what she enjoys, which is the due diligence aspect of making sure that the paperwork is done, done right, and it's pretty much everybody's in the same page, which I love that.
Right.
um, so if you're new into real estate, right, and that is kind of your sauce, right, that you feel like paperwork is the right stuff for you, connect with Ella, please. Sorry, Ella, I know you're going to get jammed with a whole bunch of people reaching
Yeah.
out.
I
How
mean,
do I become a
that
TC?
well, that or like if you're a newer investor and you're not really sure how this whole process works, don't worry about what happens after the yes. Like just know that there's people who are here who will take that baton. It's kind of like that, when they run with the baton and it's like they get to a
Yeah,
certain point and they have to pass the baton to somebody else. That's it. Like you pass the baton on to a TC and we get you to the finish line or the closing table or whatever you want to say. But we get those deals closed for you.
yeah, I love it. Let's get to the closing table.
Yes.
Vamos. So
Let's
before we
go.
go, I want you to share one more thing about the TC world that you've experienced that you think it's important for others to know more about, right? This TC space.
Right.
You dropped a lot of knowledge about like on the creative structure, but anything else you think we left that you want to share?
Um, I think that probably the most important thing that I keep on coming across is that people think TCs are too expensive. And I can tell you, like, I'm certainly not one of the cheapest. I would never say that I am, but I can tell you the value that I bring to the table.
Mm-hmm.
And, investors who are trying to cut corners and save money, don't do it. Because you're gonna
Yeah.
end up spending a whole lot more on the deal than if you were to have somebody on your side who can kind of like see all of your blind spots and let you know about them. And having a TC who can read a settlement statement. I mean, I can balance a settlement statement with my eyes closed. I've been doing it for so long. I already know that that settlement statement is off. You have my client who's the buyer bringing in $10,000 more than they should be, right? Already I've saved myself,
Right.
I've saved my fee on there, right? Um, and don't be afraid to ask questions.
Mm.
That's very important. But I think probably the number one thing that I would say aside from all of that is only buy sub twos if you're going to be responsible with them
Ooh, so
because
good.
people's livelihoods are on the line here. And the reason that we do this is to help people out of situations, not to put them in worse situations than they already were before we came along. And that's probably my number one thing is really make sure that when you're looking at these deals, you're not just evaluating, is it a good deal? Evaluate, do I have the money to make this payment
Mm-hmm.
every month, regardless of whether or not I get somebody in that house, right? Or do I have the wherewithal to refinance out if they call a note due? Or do I have that extra $5,000 to correct the due on sale? Be responsible and that's
Mm.
probably like above all you if you don't want to use the CC, which is part of being responsible, fine, but make sure that you're doing good business for sure.
Oh, I love that.
That's my
Integrity,
PSA.
integrity, integrity. That was so good.
Right. Right,
So,
so yeah,
yeah.
above all that.
And I was gonna ask one more question, but I think you just tied in and everything because doing good business, having integrity in what you do, right?
Right.
Leaving people better off, right? Because the reason we come into this field is to solve problems, right? To solve sellers' problems, and it doesn't do us any good. It doesn't do the business any good when people in the industry don't say what they're going to do, right? And that
Mhm.
just puts a bad rap in anybody that's doing creative structures or deals. So yeah, Ella, I think you nailed it because I was going to ask you, if you were going to give advice to investors, right, what would that be? And I think that last thing you shared is amazing.
Yeah, they say that as a TC, you kind of see the deep dark underbelly of investing.
Mm,
And, I've come across so many instances, and sadly, everybody's worried about the due on sale clause, due on sale clause. So what about the investor doesn't make the payments problem?
mm,
Like, let's be worried about that. Let's not be those people. Um,
exactly.
it's it's crucial, I think, for us to keep a good name for this, because this is why we're seeing regulations. This is why people are hesitant to do a
Right.
Subto. And don't get into something that you're not going to be able to correct if a problem comes up. Um, that's probably the most important thing that I've realized in working in this business, and it leads to a lot of disappointments because I'm like, "Damn," like,
Yes.
at the TC, I developed such a good relationship with the seller that
And
when
now they're calling you possibly, huh?
the buyer's not picking up the phone anymore because they're 3 months behind in mortgage because they couldn't rent out the space, and they're deciding, "Oh, I'm just gonna wait for a tenant to come in." The seller's calling me. What do I do about
Yeah.
this? What do I do about this? And I'm just like, listen, you got to do X, Y, and Z, right? I'm not gonna sit here and sugarcoat
Sure.
anything. Like, you have a
Yeah.
mortgage, you have a promissory note, we got that recorded. This is what you're gonna have to do. We can offer them to do this. We can, like, just do good business and you won't run into problems. Don't be
Yeah.
those people. We're all in it, to make money, yes, but I think the most important thing that we're here to do is to help people, to offer out of the box solutions for problems that they're having that can get them where they need to be. Start that new chapter, start that, not put them in a bind, and oh, now you have to
Exactly.
close, and now you're going to be responsible for another $20,000 in arrears because, yeah, great, okay, you can foreclose, but now what happens with all that money that they owe? That's the
Yeah.
seller's
Oh,
responsibility.
so good. Yeah, I'm glad we
It's
brought
just,
this up because that is
let's
so
do,
important, right?
let's do good. Yeah, let's do good.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, because I mean, you know that they do paint this story out there, right? Hey, you can get a property without zero money, right? And but you need reserves. Don't
right,
let that fool you guys. You need a guy. Y'all need to do good business, right?
right, right.
Um,
Super
to
important.
yeah. Ella, I'm so grateful we had this opportunity to
Me
chat and
too.
for you to be able to share, what you're doing, how you're solving problems, how you pivoted from wholesaling to what you're doing now for the past
Right.
3 years. So, again, thank you, Ella, and hope to catch up soon. I was going to say hope to see you soon in Monterey, but I won't be
Yes.
there. You enjoy the trip out there.
Thank
And thanks
you.
again. But for now, everybody, peace out, guys.
Bye.